In the beginning of the drama, we see the male lead Hao Ming, who is the general manager of Ren Group. Today is his wedding day with the youngest daughter of the Ruin family, Xin. Through a flashback, we learn that Hao Ming is blind and he doesn't want to get married. But his dad, Mr. Ren, says, "You have to get married. Our company will benefit from marrying into the Ruin family. The Ruin Group has the best jewelry designers, which we don't have in the Ren Group. That's why I want you to marry the youngest daughter of the Ruin family. Be careful not to let anyone know about your blindness during the wedding. If it comes out in public, it will be bad for our company." Returning to the present, Hao Ming's driver tells Mr. Ren Hao Ming is not coming out of the car. Hearing this, Mr. Ren gets very angry and says, "Bring Hao Ming quickly." At the same time, Hao Ming's younger brother, Hao Xuan, who does not like Hao Ming, hears from Hao Ming's assistant, "Everyone is waiting inside and Mr. Ren has called you in urgently." Hao Ming then comes out, and no one can tell that he cannot see. The bride is introduced. Her name is Tian. We see a flashback of Tian, where we learn that her dad is hospitalized and she has a twin sister named Xin. Xin was living abroad with their stepmother. The wedding was fixed between Hao Ming and Xin, but when Xin learned that Hao Ming is blind, she refused to marry him. The stepmother, in order to keep the relationship with the Ren Group, tells Tian, "You have to marry Hao Ming in place of Xin." But Tian responds, "I am not ready for this." The stepmother tries to convince her, "Just pretend to be engaged. Once your dad recovers, you will cancel the engagement." But Tian does not agree. The stepmother shows her true colors and says, "You have to marry him. If you don't agree, I'll inform your father about everything." This forces Tian to agree to the wedding. The stepmother actually wanted to take over the Ruin Group of companies and wanted to get rid of Tian. Xin supported her in this. What is going on in their family will be known later in the story. Returning to the present, Tian does not want to marry at all and plans to leave after the engagement. She packs all her belongings in a bag. On the other hand, because Hao Ming does not come, people start to gossip. Some say, "We learned that Hao Ming is blind." Even the Ruin family is not spared from the gossip. People say, Mr. Ruin had twin daughters. One lived with Mrs. Ruin, and the other lived with Mr. Ruin's mistress, which means the stepmother of Xin and Tian. Mr. Ren asks, "Why is Hao Ming not here yet?" Hao Xuan, taking advantage of the situation, says, "He will only come when he can see." Then Hao Ming comes in with full swag, his assistant guiding him with distance and directions. Tian is getting ready in the dressing room. She notices that her earring is missing and starts to search for it everywhere but cannot find it. She starts to search for it in her dress. She is looking inside her dress when the assistant takes Hao Ming to the dressing room. Hao Ming enters the room and steps on Tian's earring. Tian was going to be embarrassed, but then she remembers that he is blind, so she does not react. Hao Ming picks up the earring and tries to give it to her, but when Tian goes to take it, he pulls his hand back. Then he goes close to Tian and puts the earring in her ear by feeling it with his hand. This hurts Tian, and she starts to get angry. Hao Ming says, "Xin, why are you behaving so rudely? You are always like this." Tian rudely replies, "Yes, I am always like this." Hearing this, Hao Ming takes off his boutonniere and throws it away. He asks Tian, "Get me a new one." Tian refuses at first, but does not want to argue with him. So she gets another boutonniere and puts it around his neck, but ties it so tightly that he feels pain. He removes it and threatens her, "Cooperate with me outside, or it won't be good for both of us, especially you." The assistant comes and tells him, "It is time for us to go to the stage." So both of them smile and enter the gate. Hao Ming has a Bluetooth device in his ears, through which his assistant is guiding him on the distance and how far he has to go. Then they reach the stairs and have to go up. This is how both of them make their entrance. People cannot believe that Hao Ming is not blind when they see him walking so gracefully. Both of them reach the stage. The assistant is guiding Hao Ming. As the engagement ceremony starts, the assistant says, "The ring is in the right pocket." Hao Ming tries to put the ring on Tian's finger but fails because he cannot see, and a big guy is blocking the assistant's view. This man was hired by Hao Xuan to expose his brother's blindness so he can take over Hao Ming's position as the general manager of the company. Hao Ming tries several times to put the ring on Tian's finger but fails. The ring falls from his hand and people start making fun of him. Tian tries to save the situation by picking up the ring and giving it to Hao Ming. In this scene, Hao Ming is getting nervous. Tian then puts the ring on her finger and the engagement ceremony ends. After that, Tian tries to quickly change her clothes and leave, but Hao Ming's assistant stops her and says, "You need to go with Hao Ming." Tian asks, "Why do I have to go?" The assistant shows her the contract, which says that Xin will move in with Hao Ming after the engagement. This confirms Tian's suspicions that Xin and her stepmother plan to trap her with Hao Ming. With no other choice, Tian decides to move into Hao Ming's house. The assistant tells Tian, "I will take your belongings to your room." Hao Ming stops him and says, "She will take her own belongings and leave. She's just a servant in my house, so she has to follow everything I say." Tian says, "I won't do this." Hao Ming tells her, "The compensation for not following me will be 50 million yuan. Tian is shocked. The assistant shows her the contract again, which clearly states that if Party B does not follow Party A's instructions, then Party B has to pay 50 million yen to Party A. Hao Ming teases her, saying, "Xin, you and your mom were so excited to marry me, but you didn't even read the contract before signing it. Now you have no other option but to listen to me." What else can poor Tian do? She picks up her heavy bag and starts to go upstairs. After much effort, she takes her belongings to her room. While taking them, she gets tired and lies on the bed to rest. The assistant comes to pick her up and says, "The boss has called you to cook for him downstairs." Tian angrily says, "Go tell your boss that I am not doing any work." The assistant says, "The boss also asked me to take 50 million yuan from you if you refuse." Hearing this, Tian goes downstairs to cook. She sees live crabs on the table, and Hao Ming tells her, "Cook these crabs." Tian, scared of the crabs, says, "I can't cook them. I don't know how to cook crabs." Hao Ming asks, "What is the use of Siri then?" He asks Siri for the recipe, and she starts telling him how to cook crabs. Siri says to put the crabs in salt water, and Tian brings hot salt water. Siri asks for spices, and Tian brings them and places them on the table. Then she goes to prepare other things, but Hao Ming just drinks the salt water and eats the spices. His condition gets worse, and he starts shouting for water. While searching for water, Hao Ming touches the container of crabs, and they jump out and fall on the table. One crab bites Hao Ming's finger. Hao Ming starts shouting in pain and calls Tian. Tian runs and brings water. Hao Ming starts accusing her, saying, "You planned all this, didn't you? Forget all that, help me. Remove this crab from my finger." Tian, scared, tries to remove the crab from his finger, but it bites her hand. Then takes a lighter and tries to burn the crab, but accidentally burns Hao Ming's hand. Then she takes a knife and tries to cut the crab, but she doesn't hit it. Then, inexplicably, she sprinkles chili powder on the crab. Due to this, Hao Ming starts burning. He tells Tian to stop her nonsense. Then he asks Siri, "If a crab bites someone's finger, what should be done?" Hao Ming does this and puts his finger in salt water. The crab leaves his finger, and his finger is completely swollen. At night, Tian is looking at her jewelry designs for her company, which she designs under the name Olivia, but no one knows her real identity. Her jewelry is very expensive, and people buy it very quickly. They praise her designs. The assistant comes and says, "The boss has called you to the bathroom. He needs your help to take a bath." Tian gets angry and says, "Is your boss mentally ill or a small kid that he needs help taking a bath? Go tell your pervert boss that I am not coming." The assistant repeats that the boss asked him to take 50 million yuan from her if she does not listen. Then we see a scene in the hospital. We learn that the stepmother planned to trap her father in the hospital. She conspired with the doctor and gave him some medicines that will never allow him to get up. Miss Wang, the caretaker of Mr. Ruin, hears this. She was not allowed to be there, so she didn't know what was happening in the hospital. She calls Tian and says, "The stepmother's plans are to keep your father in the hospital." Tian tells her, "Keep an eye on her. I will think about how to save my father." On the other hand, Hao Ming calls Tian again, and this time Tian has to go to the bathroom. He shows her his swollen finger and says, "I cannot take a bath because of you. Now you will have to help me take a bath." Then he tells her, "Help me undress." Tian is shocked. She starts to unbutton his shirt and looks at his body, saying, "Oh, so he has abs too." Hao Ming then tells her, "Turn around." He gets into the tub to take a bath, and unable to find the bath salts, asks Tian, "Can you find the bath salts?" Tian starts to search for them. They were kept on Hao Ming's backside, but Tian cannot reach them. As she stretches her hand, her foot slips, and she falls into the tub on top of Hao Ming. Both are embarrassed. Hao Ming quickly pushes Tian back and asks, "Did you do this intentionally?" Tian replies, "I didn't do anything intentionally, my foot just slipped." Hao Ming asks, "Stop acting. Tell me what you want. Why do you want to marry me?" Tian says, "I don't have any plans, but right now we both have the same problem, so we can work together and help each other overcome this difficulty." Hao Ming asks, "How can you help me?" Tian replies, "I will be your eyes." Hao Ming, uninterested, pushes her back. Tian, wet, asks him for a towel. Hao Ming gives her a towel and Tian covers herself with it. Then she remembers that he is blind, so she quickly gets out of the tub and sits in the hall, thinking about her stepmother's plans. She wonders if her stepmother's real intention is to control the Ruin family, because after her father's death, she came to the Ruin family with Xin and started claiming her rights. But Tian's father had never said anything. Returning to the present, Tian realizes she cannot reveal her true identity because her father's life is still in danger. She needs to plan properly before taking any action. Hao Ming comes with a file and says, "You have to memorize the names of the people, their work, and their company names mentioned in this file. I'm taking you to a cocktail party tomorrow. You will be my eyes, as you said. If you do this properly, we can talk further about it." Hao Ming leaves. Tian stays awake the whole night memorizing everyone's names, their professions, their positions, their companies, everything. While memorizing, she falls asleep. The next morning, a boy comes and takes the file from her face. Tian, startled to see an unknown girl, gives her a strong kick and asks, "Who are you, and why are you here?" The boy says, "Don't worry, Mr. Hao Ming has asked me to get you ready." They start choosing the best dresses for Tian. After trying many dresses, they select a beautiful one that makes her look stunning. Hao Ming's assistant tells him, "Miss Jinxin looks very beautiful, and she will look even better with you. You two will be the highlights of the party." Seeing Hao Ming, Tian goes to him and thanks the stylist, saying, "Luckily, you cannot see how beautiful I look." Hao Ming gets close to her and says, "But I can smell you." Then both of them go to the party. Tian tells Hao Ming who is where, who is coming towards him, and who is not. During this, a man starts to come towards them. Before he reaches them, Tian tells Hao Ming about him. After that, another man comes to talk to them. Tian tells him about the man so he does not get scared, and he goes away. Tian asks Hao Ming to sit somewhere else so that fewer people will notice them, because if many people come towards them, Hao Ming will have difficulty handling the situation. They go to sit on the side. Hao Xuan is also at the party and collides with the real Xin, who has also come to the party. Hao Xuan calls her Xin, startling her. She then says, "I'm Tian, Xin's twin." Hao Xuan starts praising her and says, "We are family now." Seeing this, Xin looks at Tian and Hao Ming. She says, "What are these people doing here?" Hao Xuan replies, "Let's go and meet them." Both of them go and sit on the chairs opposite them. Hao Xuan asks Hao Ming, "How did you come out of the house? Didn't Dad ask you to stay at home?" Hao Ming replies, "When there is work, Dad doesn't expect anything from you, so I have to handle everything." Hearing this, Hao Xuan gets angry but can't say anything. Then Xin asks, "Did your eyes recover?" Hao Ming says, "They haven't recovered yet, but even though I cannot see, I can recognize people." Xin starts to pretend to talk lovingly and sweetly with her and asks, "Do you not call us at home these days? You know how worried Mom and I are about you." Tian asks, "What are you worried about?" Xin says, "Are you all right? I am especially worried about you. After all, we are twins, and it is said that twins are connected." Tian replies, "You are right, we are twins. If you had married Hao Ming instead of me, no one would be able to tell us apart." Hearing this, Xin gets very angry but does not say anything. Hao Xuan again plans to insult Hao Ming and asks him to eat steak because Hao Ming doesn't eat steak. He says, "Brother, you are managing such a big company. Can't you eat steak?" Hao Ming replies sarcastically, "Is it necessary to eat steak to manage a company? No, I don't eat steak, but we are still managing the company well. You eat steak, but Dad knows that you are not capable of managing the company." Seeing the heated argument between the two brothers, Tian says, "It seems like there is nothing more to talk about, so we are leaving." Just as they are leaving, Hao Xuan pushes a trolley towards Hao Ming. Tian, trying to save Hao Ming from getting hit by the trolley, pushes the trolley back. In the process, she falls down. Hao Ming holds her, but Tian's heel breaks. Seeing this, Xin makes fun of her and says, "It seems like your heels were of bad quality." She starts laughing. Hao Ming picks up Tian and takes her outside the party. Tian guides him with directions. People find them cute together, but Hao Xuan and Xin get angry. At home, Tian makes food for both of them. They sit together to eat. Hao Ming tells Tian, "You don't like your necklace, do you?" Tian asks, "Why do you think so?" Hao Ming says, "I felt it." Tian says, "You don't need to think about this." Hao Ming says, "I accept your proposal. Now you will be my eyes, and I will help you in whatever you need." Tian is happy to hear this. Hao Ming then tries to flirt with her. The next day, we see a scene at the hospital. Tian, dressed as a doctor, goes to take her father out of the nursing home with her partner. Then we learn that her partner is actually Hao Ming's assistant, Song. Tian thanks him for helping her, and Song thanks her for taking care of Hao Ming. He tells Tian about Hao Ming's accident. Hao Ming lost his eyesight in the accident, but Song doubts that it is a planned attack. A flashback shows Hao Ming going for a morning walk when a car hits him. A masked man gets out of the car, checks Hao Ming, and leaves. Hao Ming sits down thinking about this when Hao Xuan comes to him without making any sound. Hao Ming recognizes him by his smell. Hao Xuan starts insulting him again, saying that he is blind and cannot do anything without someone's help. He asks, "What will you do about managing the company?" Hao Ming does not say anything. Tian comes and defends Hao Ming. She reminds Hao Xuan about his bad deeds and tells him how kind and good Hao Ming is. Hao Xuan continues to mock Ming and insults him. Tian, in order to get back at him, asks Song to turn off the lights. Hao Xuan falls down in the dark and starts shouting. Tian turns on the lights and warns him to stop talking nonsense about Hao Ming. Hao Xuan threatens all three of them. "I will get back at you." At night, Tian falls asleep while reading a book. Hao Ming is thinking about how Tian defended him in front of Hao Xuan and even got back at him. He calls out, "Tian," and wants to thank her, but Tian doesn't reply because she is asleep. He goes to her, confirms that she is asleep, and then picks her up and puts her to bed. Tian, missing her father a lot, starts muttering his name. Hao Ming goes to put his hand on her head, but she grabs his hand and falls asleep. He tries to go away, and by mistake, their lips touch. Hao Ming is silent, but then starts to feel something. Meanwhile, Xin and her mother learn that Mr. Ruin has disappeared from the hospital. The stepmother is worried, but Xin is not worried at all. She says, "Whatever happened, happened. I will not back off. I will take what is rightfully mine." Just then, she receives a call from Hao Xuan. He asks her, "Give me some of your designs." Xin agrees, saying, "I will take Tian's place in the company." The next morning, Tian opens her eyes and sees herself in the bed. She is shocked because she was sitting on the chair. When she sees Hao Ming in front of her, she is even more surprised. She starts to think if something happened between them the previous night. She tries to ask Hao Ming, but he says, "What do you think?" Tian replies, "I don't think anything happened, but did you do anything?" Hao Ming says, "I didn't do anything, but you did something to me." Hao Ming adds in a suspenseful tone, "First, you held my hand, then you brought me closer to you, and you were calling out for Dad." Hearing this, Tian feels relieved. Then, the doorbell rings. She opens the door and sees her stepmother and Xin. She lets them in and tells Hao Ming about their arrival. Her stepmother's name is Yunju. She comes and sits next to Tian. Xin notices the cameras in the house and checks them. She remembers all the cameras in the house. From this, we understand that she has come here with a motive. Yunju talks to Tian about her father's disappearance from the hospital. She tells Tian, "Your father was kidnapped." Tian, looking at her with suspicion, asks, "Did the hospital people tell you?" Mom tells Tian, "Your father has disappeared from the hospital." She says, "I learned from the hospital that a boy and a girl dressed as doctors came and took your father away." Tian gets nervous but keeps a scared expression on her face, so stepmom thinks that she's worried about her father. On the other hand, Xin takes the opportunity to go upstairs, but Tian sees her. Stepmom, Xin isn't feeling well, so she went to the washroom. Then she asks Tian, "Who could be the enemy of your father? Who kidnapped him?" Tian tries to control her emotions but is unable to act convincingly. Meanwhile, Xin sneaks into Tian's room, searching through her drawers, but she doesn't find what she's looking for. At the same time, Hao Ming approaches the room. Hearing a noise from outside, Hao Ming enters, and Xin freezes like a statue, keeping silent so he doesn't hear her. Suspicious, Hao Ming starts searching the room with his hand and stretches towards her, but Xin quickly moves away, unnoticed by him. Hao Ming leaves, and then Xin finds a box with all of Tian's unlaunched designs. She takes the designs and heads downstairs. Tian grows suspicious and tries to check on her, but stepmom stops her. By then, Xin has already gone downstairs. Xin, acting innocently, says, "Maybe I ate something wrong and that's why I'm not feeling well. Let's go to the hospital." She leaves with her, and Tian begins suspecting both of them. She knows stepmom's motive, but can't understand why Xin is involved. A few days later, Tian learns that a new product is being launched in her company under her name. When she sees the jewelry design, she's shocked. It's her own design. She rushes to check her box, but all her designs are gone. She realizes that Xin stole them while pretending to go to the washroom. Furious, Tian rushes to her company to stop Xin, but the guards block her because Xin has already instructed them not to let her in. The event is about to start, and Xin, posing as Tian, makes a grand entrance, taking credit for the jewelry designs. She begins telling everyone about her designs and how she created them. Hao Ming, present at the event, starts to recognize the design style. Xin tells everyone, "I got my inspiration from orchids." After her presentation, people are invited to ask questions. Hao Ming raises his hand and asks about her inspiration. Xin stumbles, unable to give the right answer. She tries to explain, but Hao Ming interrupts and says, "These designs reflect Olivia's style, meaning you're not the true creator of these designs." Everyone starts gossiping. shocked to realize Xin has stolen the designs. People begin questioning and accusing her. Hao Ming leaves the event, and Tian manages to catch up with him. She asks, "How did you know these designs weren't hers?" Hao Ming replies, "I know everything about Olivia's jewelry design style." Hao Ming and Tian go to meet Mr. Wang. Mr. Wang thanks Hao Ming, saying, "Thank you for saving me from a big loss." He agrees to sign a contract with Ren Group, and they start celebrating the occasion by having drinks. Mr. Wang offers a drink to Tian, but Tian says, "I can't drink because I'm allergic." Hao Ming starts drinks on her behalf, and he ends up drinking too much. Xin has to take him home. She puts him on the sofa and watches him, saying, "You can't hold your wine, but you still drank so much for me." She smiles and then goes to take a shower. Meanwhile, Hao Ming wakes up and calls out, "Tian, bring me water." He keeps calling her. So Tian, wearing only a towel, goes to him since Hao Ming cannot see. She gives him a glass of water and starts drying her hair. Hao Ming, with blurry vision, can only see Tian. He moves towards her. Tian, not seeing him, says, "Don't drink so much in excitement, you can't even take care of yourself." Hao Ming moves closer, his vision clearing up slightly. He extends his hand toward Tian, and her towel falls. She quickly picks it up and scolds him, "What are you doing?" She tries to run away, but Hao Ming's foot touches the towel, causing her to stumble. Just before she falls, Hao Ming catches her, touches her face, and asks, "Am I seeing things or am I hallucinating?" Tian quickly says, "Your hand is touching somewhere else," and runs away. As soon as she leaves, Hao Ming's vision blurs again, and he becomes completely blind. Next, Mr. Ren says, "I am very impressed with Hao Ming's work, because he convinced Mr. Wang not to sign the contract." Hao Xuan hears this and gets very angry. Then we see that Xin and Hao Xuan having an affair. Xin, still upset about the humiliation she faced at the new product launch event. She is so mad at Tian and Hao Ming. She says, "They're together now, and we can't spoil their plan." Hao Xuan responds, "One is blind, and the other is useless. Don't worry, I will handle them," giving an evil smile. The next day, Hao Ming goes to Mr. Wang's office to get the contract signed. Song asks, "Did Miss Ruan not come with you?" Hao Ming replies happily, "She's making fish for me at home." Song asks, "For you?" Hao Ming, with a flirtatious tone, says, "Who else would she make it for?" and starts laughing. Mr. Wang is late, but then his secretary arrives and tells Hao Ming, "Mr. Wang canceled the meeting because Xin came yesterday and convinced him not to collaborate with you. Now, Mr. Wang is doing the deal with Hao Xuan's company." Hao Ming is shocked and furious. When Hao Ming gets home, Tian brings him the fish she made, saying, "Congratulations on getting the deal." Hao Ming, upset, asks, "Don't you have anything else to say?" Tian responds, "Hao Ming, you're so arrogant." Just then, Tian gets a call from her stepmother. Hao Ming tells her, "Pick up the call on speaker." Tian asks, "What's up?" Stepmom says, "Everything is settled on my side. Mr. Wang is now with Hao Xuan. Did Hao Ming suspect me? Even if he knew, there's nothing you can do. If it bothers you, come back home." She hangs up before Tian can respond. Hao Ming says angrily, "You should know because it was your plan." Tian, confused, asks, "What do you mean?" Hao Ming asks, "When did you and Hao Xuan team up?" Tian, shocked, replies, "When did I meet Hao Xuan? What's happening?" Hao Ming explains, "You went to Mr. Wang's office yesterday and the deal was canceled and transferred to Hao Xuan's name." Tian says, "When did I go to Mr. Wang's office? I didn't go anywhere, I stayed at home all day. Why would I do that?" Hao Ming retorts, "You know why." Tian tries to explain, "I have nothing to do with Hao Xuan," but Hao Ming, upset, says, "I hate liars." Hurt, Tian asks, "Don't you trust me even a little? Maybe my stepmother is trying to create a rift between us." Hao Ming says, "She is your mother. Why would she do that?" Tian responds, "You don't understand. She's not my real family. Believe it or not, that's up to you. But I swear, I didn't do anything." Frustrated, she throws the fish dish away and storms off to her room. Meanwhile, Xin and Hao Xuan are celebrating. Hao Xuan asks, "How did you come up with such a good idea? Do you always play games like this?" Xin replies, "I helped you. Now you have to fulfill your promise." Hao Xuan says, "Of course I will help you become the owner of the Ruin Group, right?" Saying this, he starts looking at Xin, like he have other plans in his mind. Hao Ming, still worried about Xin's words, begins to doubt her. He calls Song and asks, "Check the CCTV footage of the house, so it will be clear that Tian was at home or not that day." Meanwhile, Tian understands that it's all done by Xin, so he heads towards to Hao Ming's room to tell him everything. On the other hand, Song calls him and tells, Tian didn't gone out of house yesterday. Tian is about to knock his door, but she stops and thinks, "Even if I tell him it was Xin, will he believe me?" Then adds, What difference does it make if he believes or not? She goes to knock on Hao Ming's door again, but before she can, Hao Ming opens it. Tian quietly moves aside so he doesn't see her. She sneaks behind him to see what he'll do next. Hao Ming walks toward Tian's door to knock, but he stops, confused about how to apologize or what to say. He starts to leave, but then turns back, ready to knock again, but he hesitates. Seeing this, Tian laughs and says, "I'm standing behind you. If you want to say something, you can tell me." In the next scene, Tian and Hao Ming are enjoying street food together, trying to resolve their misunderstanding. Hao Ming says, "I can't understand why she would do something like this." Tian replies, "She's like that, always taking the wrong path to get what she wants." She then starts feeding him. Hao Ming refuses and says, "I don't eat street food." The next day, Hao Xuan is about to sign the contract with Mr. Wang when Hao Ming makes a grand entrance. Hao Ming says, "I hope I didn't disturb you." Hao Xuan says, "What are you doing here? Can't you see that I'm in a meeting?" "Oh, sorry, I forgot that you can't see. But don't you think it's wrong to interrupt a meeting?" Ignoring him, Hao Ming starts praising Mr. Wang's company, saying, "Mr. Wang has set a high standard for every jewelry product. I'm trying to match that high standard." He shows Mr. Wang some jewelry designs, explaining, "These were designed 5 years ago by an artist named Olivia. These designs actually belong to Tian." Seeing the designs, Tian is shocked, thinking, "These designs had stolen by Xin. How he get them?" Mr. Wang loves the designs. Hao Ming continues, "Such a design has never been created in China." Mr. Wang says, "I can't believe these were made 5 years ago. I want to meet the designer." Hao Ming replies, "No one knows Olivia's real identity." Hao Xuan starts to worry. Desperate to save the deal, pushes Mr. Wang to sign the contract. Mr. Wang apologizes, "I'm sorry, but I don't want to collaborate with your company right now. I need some time to think." Hao Xuan, furious, says nothing. He heads straight to Xin, who is eagerly waiting for news about the contract. He vents to her, "I'll never be able to defeat that blind Hao Ming." He played his trump card. Xin responds, "If we can't get rid of Hao Ming, we should get rid of my sister first. We just need to find the one person she cares about the most, my father." Hao Xuan suggests, "If Hao Ming helped them, he must have kept your dad in one of the 3 hospitals under the Ren Group. We need to search those hospitals." Meanwhile, Hao Ming and Tian are sitting on the sofa. Tian is watching a K-drama. What's wrong with Secretary Kim? Suddenly, an intimate scene between them comes on. Tian quickly lowers the volume. Hao Ming asks, "Do you like romantic dramas?" Tian replies, "I don't watch these scenes. It just came on by chance." She tries to change the subject and asks, "Do you know if Olivia is a boy or a girl?" Hao Ming responds, "Olivia is a girl. A boy could never design jewelry like that." Tian then asks, "Do you like her?" Hao Ming moves closer to her and teases, "Are you jealous?" Tian nervously says, "No," then she leaves. Just then, Tian's phone rings. She gets a call from the hospital where her father is admitted. The caller informs her, "Your father has been transferred." Tian rushes to the hospital and finds her father's room empty. Worried, she starts thinking about what to do. Suddenly, she hears a noise and hides behind the curtain. Xin enters the room with a goon, complaining, "We've searched all 3 hospitals under the Ren Group and still can't find him." She calls Hao Xuan and tells him the bad news, then leaves the room. Moments later, the goon returns. He suspects someone is behind the curtain. Spotting Tian, she panics and grabs a stand to defend herself. Before she can act, Song bursts in and knocks the goon out. He quickly takes Tian to Hao Ming, where her father is. Tian, relieved to see her father, tells Hao Ming, "My sister is working with Hao Xuan. They were planning to take my father away." Hao Ming replies, "That's why I made all the arrangements." Tian, overwhelmed with emotion, cries and hugs Hao Ming. Hao Ming gently says, "Don't go out alone in the future. If you face any problem, come to me first. I will solve it." Later, Tian is working on a new jewelry design when suddenly, the power goes out in the entire house. She grabs her phone, turns on the flashlight, and heads to find Hao Ming. He is just stepping out of his room. Tian asks, "Do you know where the electricity box is?" Hao Ming tells her, "It's downstairs." Tian guides him downstairs, but her phone dies due to a low battery. Hao Ming holds her hand and reassures her, "Let's go, I'll take you." Navigating through the darkness is easy for him, as he's been blind for a long time and knows every corner of the house by heart. They reach the electricity box, and there's a torch nearby. Tian asks, "Can you point the torch toward the switchboard?" Hao Ming points the torch, and as he does, he starts to see Tian's face, blurry but clearer than before. Overjoyed by this, he kisses her, and Tian doesn't resist. They are sharing a romantic moment when Hao Xuan suddenly enters Hao Ming's room. Hao Ming was looking for his official seal, which he finds in a drawer and takes with him. The next morning, Tian is elated, realizing she's fallen in love with Hao Ming. But she's also worried because she's pretending to be Xin Xin. What if Hao Ming will discover the truth? Hao Ming approaches with his tie and asks, "Can you help me with this?" Tian laughs and ties it for him. Hao Ming then asks, "Will you come with me to an important meeting?" Tian says, "What will I do at your office meeting?" Hao Ming smiles. "You're going to be my wife, so you have to go with me everywhere." Tian blushes, and they both go to the meeting. Chairman Ren has gathered everyone for an important announcement. Because of Hao Ming's successful projects, Mr. Ren announces, Hao Ming will now officially be the CEO of the company. No one on the board objects, and everyone celebrates the decision. Suddenly, Hao Xuan barges in, declaring, "I object." He holds up a file and claims Hao Ming has committed fraud. He sold the company's shares to private companies at an extremely low price. No one believes him at first, but then Hao Xuan presents the file as proof, showing contracts signed by Hao Ming with other companies. The key evidence is Hao Ming's seal, which Hao Xuan had stolen from his room the previous night to execute his plan. Seeing this, everyone assumes it must be true that Hao Ming sold the shares. The board members, shocked, start questioning Hao Ming. Hao Ming says, "I don't know anything about this." At this point, Tian can't stay quiet anymore. She speaks up. "Hao Ming might have been framed. You shouldn't make any decisions without proper investigation." Hao Xuan seizes the moment and says, "I should take over the project that was assigned to Hao Ming." The chairman agrees, "You're right," and suspends Hao Ming. Everything that belongs to Hao Ming is taken back by the company until the investigation is complete. They dismiss the meeting. Tian tells Hao Ming, "You should have said something. He's your father. How could he do this?" Hao Ming replies, "It doesn't matter. My dad's always been like that. He only cares about winners. This time, I lost, and my brother won." He tells Tian, "Let's go home." When they reach home, they find all their belongings thrown outside. Tian, shocked, says, "The chairman said they'd investigate. Why did Hao Xuan throw all our stuff out?" Hao Ming replies, "There's nothing I can do." Hao Xuan is now the CEO. Then we see Xin Xin standing on the balcony, laughing and drinking wine. Then, Song steps in and takes both of them to his apartment, which has been closed for many years. Song apologizes, "I'm sorry for making you stay in such an old apartment." Tian says, "This place is big enough for us to stay." Hao Ming tells Song, "You can go back now." Song jokes, "So soon, boss. I'll clean the house first and then leave. That way, you two will be alone." Hao Ming insists, "I'm telling you to go and start your own business. You've sacrificed a lot for me." Song replies, "Boss, I respect you and I've followed you for a long time. No matter what happens, I will always stay with you." Tian spots some spiders and starts cleaning the house with Song. After they're done, the house looks sparkling clean. Song then suggests, "Let's order something to eat." But Tian says, "I'll cook today." Song, not wanting to be the third wheel, leaves. Tian and Hao Ming sit down to cut vegetables, but Hao Ming struggles. Tian takes his hand and shows him how to cut properly. Hao Ming holds her hand and says, "Thank you for staying with me. I feel bad for bringing you here." Tian responds, "Don't feel guilty. It's not a big deal. There are people who live in far worse conditions. Compared to them, we are lucky. We'll light a small lamp and listen to music together." Hao Ming softly confesses, "I want to stay with you forever." In the next scene, the food is ready. Tian brings the hot food but accidentally burns her hand. Hao Ming, being caring, blows on her hand, but it's the wrong one. Tian says, "I actually burned my other hand." Hao Ming, realizing his mistake, quickly blows on her other hand. That night, as they sit talking by candlelight, since the apartment lights aren't working, Tian asks, "What will you do next?" Hao Ming replies, "It's not the right time for anything." Tian says, "How will you deal with Hao Xuan?" Hao Ming answers, "I don't need to deal with him. Competing with my own brother again and again isn't good. And it's not fun either. Hao Xuan and I are just pawns in Ren Group, controlled by our father." The atmosphere turns romantic, and Hao Ming kisses Tian. The next day, Hao Ming starts seeing blur. "I learned how to make breakfast in advance." Tian tries the dish, and it's very tasty. She feeds some to Hao Ming, but he playfully bites her finger. Just as he's about to flirt with her, Song arrives. Seeing the scene, he doesn't disturb them and steps out again. After a while, he knocks on the door and enters. Tian goes inside to get him some water. Song says to Hao Ming, "Boss, I didn't see anything." Hao Ming replies, "I know you saw everything," revealing that he can now see a little. Song is excited and almost tells Tian, but Hao Ming quickly stops him. He warns, "The chances of my eyes recovering fully are low. Don't tell Xin Xin about this." Song then shares what he uncovered in his investigation. I also recorded the driver's confession, where he admits to causing the accident under Hao Xuan's orders. Meanwhile, Hao Xuan's results matter, not the process. The chairman, now furious, says, "He is your brother. I told you to compete, not to harm each other." Hao Ming, his voice raised, says to his father, "Haven't you understood yet? This is all because of you. Our whole family is a mess, and you're responsible for this. You made our home a battleground, told us to compete. You wanted to control us like puppets." The chairman says, "No, I raised you, made you the heir of the company." Hao Xuan, in anger, says, "Then what about me?" The chairman responds, "You are not even close to your brother. You've never done anything right to prove you're capable. That's why you're not worthy of being the heir of the company." Enraged, Hao Xuan lashes out and attacks Hao Ming. As the chairman tries to stop them, Hao Xuan pushes Hao Ming, causing him to fall against the table and then to the ground, unconscious. Hearing the commotion, Tian rushes in. She and the chairman frantically try to wake Hao Ming, but he's unresponsive. For the first time, Hao Xuan looks scared. In the next scene, Hao Ming is getting treatment, and now his eyesight can be restored. She brings food for Song and urges him to eat. Then she goes to Hao Ming and tells him, "The doctor said your eyesight could return. Once you wake up, you'll be able to see me." Tian plans to tell Hao Ming the truth about her identity after he regains consciousness. When Xin finds out that Hao Ming's eyesight is about to return, she is shocked. She realizes that Hao Ming will fully support Tian, and she can't take anything from her now. She won't be able to become the owner of the Ruin Group, especially since her father isn't backing her. She comes up with a plan and tells to Mom, "Hao Ming isn't a problem because he's my fiancé. Now I want to take back my place from Tian." Mom asks, "What are you planning?" Xin responds, "I'll get back what's mine, and Tian will be the sacrifice." Xin decided to kill Tian, but Mom stops. However, she is not going to stop. Tian is walking when a group of goons attack her. They knock her unconscious and take her away. Xin says, "I've taken on Tian's identity now." When Tian regains consciousness, she whispers, "Where am I?" She looks around and notices she is tied up. A goon enters, takes her picture and sends it to someone. He gives her food and then leaves. Tian has been kidnapped for 2 days, and Song is worried about her. He is about to go find Tian when Xin, disguised as Tian, arrives. She tells him, "Go and rest." As she walks away, she thinks, when Hao Ming regains his eyesight, he will see the real Xin. Hao Ming begins to regain consciousness and exclaims, "I can see again!" Xin pretends to be happy and says, "I'm so glad you're back." Hao Ming responds, "It's good to see you again, Xin." However, he doesn't realize that Tian has been pretending to be Xin for so long, and the person with him now is the real Xin. He suddenly notices something and says, "Your hand feels different." Xin leans in to kiss him, but Hao Ming rubs his head, saying, "I have a headache." He senses something is off. She offers, "I'll bring you some water," and walks away, leaving Hao Ming deep in thought. Later, Xin orders a cake to celebrate Hao Ming regaining his eyesight. She switches off the lights before Hao Ming arrives, and when he enters, he says, "That's odd." Tian is scared of darkness, but Xin is not. Xin tells him, "I'm not scared of the dark anymore." Hao Ming gives her a strange look. She feeds him some cake, and they have a drink together. Trying to get romantic, Xin leans in, but Hao Ming excuses himself, saying, "I have a meeting to attend," and quickly leaves for his room. Xin's plan fails. The next morning, Tian, still imprisoned, watches the news on TV. She sees Hao Ming and Xin together and realizes Xin is behind all of this. His father hands him control of the company, adding, "Hao Xuan surrendered to the police and confessed to his crimes. The police are filing a case of attempted murder against him, but since he surrendered, his punishment will be reduced." We then see Hao Xuan looking at a picture of himself and Hao Ming. Silently, he apologizes to the photo, saying, "I'm sorry, Hao Ming. I've done wrong." Meanwhile, a goon brings food to Tian, along with a bag full of money. He sits down to count it, but suddenly starts itching and sneezing. Tian asks, "Do you have any infectious disease?" The goon stays silent, but after she asks repeatedly, he admits, "I'm allergic to money." Tian gets an idea and offers, "If you're having trouble, I can help you count it." The goon responds, "Don't be too smart." Tian insists, I'm bored of sitting here, and there are only news channels on TV. Reluctantly, the goon hands her the money. As he's distracted, Tien drops the money on purpose. The goon angrily bends down to pick it up, and Tien seizes the opportunity to knock him out with a wooden tool. She ties his hands and feet, demanding, "Give me your phone and the bag." When the goon refuses, Tien throws money at him, causing him to break out in an allergic reaction again. Panicking, the goon tries to flee. Shin soon finds out and rages, "I thought Tien was dead!" Furious, she says to her mom, "You told me you killed her!" Now that Tien has escaped, she's even angrier. Then she orders goons to find Tien and kill her. Tien is about to call Hao Ming, but stops and thinks, will Hao Ming even believe me? If he truly loves me, why hasn't he recognized Shin by now? Lost in thought, she heads to Song's apartment, thinking, I still have the key to his place. Tien finds a form for the World Jewelry Competition in Song's apartment, and notices the name Princess Cece written on it. She says to herself, "This is the same name I used to design jewelry under." Suddenly, she gets an idea. "I'll participate in this competition." Her application gets accepted. Meanwhile, the goons are still searching for Tien, so Shin is worried. Just then, Hao Ming arrives and asks her, "Are you ready for the award ceremony where the winner of the jewelry competition will be announced?" Shin goes with Hao Ming to the award ceremony. The event is underway and it's time to announce the final winner. The host declares, the winner of the competition is Princess Cece, a name no one recognizes except Hao Ming. Princess Cece, wearing a mask, walks onto the stage. As she removes her mask, Shin and everyone else gasp in shock. Tien is standing there. The crowd had no idea they were twins. Shin, speechless, stares in disbelief, but Hao Ming remains calm, as if he already knew. Tien announces, "I am Tien, and I am also Olivia." Hao Ming is called to present the award. He walks onto the stage and stands beside Tien. Shin desperately tries to defend herself, claiming, "I am the real Shin. Tien has taken my place. I've been taking care of Hao Ming and I even baked him a cake." Hao Ming responds, "I know you are Shin, but I don't love you. I recognized you right from the start, because you weren't afraid of the dark." Upon hearing this, Shin is devastated. The police arrive and arrest her. Finally, Hao Ming and Tien are together. They decide to move into Song's apartment. Hao Ming smiles and proposes to Tien, saying, "Will you marry me?" Tien smiles and replies, "Yes." Their kiss seals the happy ending of the story. Do not forget to subscribe the channel for more videos.